So I got real fancy with the whiteboard, but I want to go over strength training for runners. I think that was like the second voted thing. And at the end, I'll give like actual exercises that I do and I would recommend that will be good for building strength and also improving your running specifically. So the thing about strength training is, most of the time, if you ask for like, what should I do in terms of strength training, you're gonna get like, oh, you should squat, you should do calf raises, stuff like that. And those things are fine. And I love those things, but they're not necessarily specifically good for running. So like if you look at some of the best runners in the world, like Courtney Dauwalter, Zach Bitter, like these are people doing 200, 300-mile races at incredible paces. They don't look that strong, and they're not doing a lot of lifting per se. So is it necessarily that strength is what you need to run? It doesn't hurt. It's like a math equation. If you're putting a lot of force on your knees through running, if your knees are stronger, they can handle more force and you are less likely to be injured. However, there is a trade-off that comes with that. So like I got into fitness through lifting. I didn't find running till like a few years after I started lifting, and I started doing a lot of squats, deadlifts, stuff like that. That's what I enjoyed. And what I found, and this was explained to me by a great running coach who kind of opened my eyes to this a little bit. He said, think about when you squat, what you do. So like I'm externally rotating my legs. So basically I'm pushing my knees out. I'm keeping my torso tensed and rigid. It's like I'm not moving, I'm not bending anywhere, rigid torso, externally rotated, knees pushing out, and I'm moving vertically. So moving the weight up and down, the vertical load. Running is almost the exact opposite of that. So when I'm running, I'm doing more of an internal rotation with my legs. So I'm bringing my knee kind of forward and even like in a little bit towards the midline of my body. And I'm also rotating my torso as I run. And it's like a horizontal plane of motion. It's like I'm running and the force is kind of pushing me horizontally instead of just vertically up and down. And it's kind of ingrained in my brain that this is like how I move. I move like a squat. It's why bodybuilders have this kind of rigid walk, if you've ever seen that. It's because they've ingrained in their brain to have a rigid, spine, and good posture, which is great, but they're just very rigid in their movements because this is how they lift and this is what they do a lot. So in the same way, if you do a lot of squats or something like that, then you are ingraining in your brain this movement pattern, and it can make running a little bit harder because from doing so many squats, now my glutes are worked a lot, and I'm good at bringing my knees out. Like I have a good mobility to externally rotate, but I struggle with good internal rotation. So what I've had to do now is like stop squatting and start addressing these issues. My glutes will be strong and kind of tight, and my adductors, like the muscles in between your legs, like in the inner part of the thigh, that's very stretched out for me from doing so many squats. So I'm tight in all the wrong muscles and loose in kind of the wrong muscles. So I have to like reprogram myself to run with good form, and it's going to take some time. So like I don't advocate that you shouldn't do these things. I still squat because I enjoy it. I'm just taking a break for now to fix my form. But what I'm saying is like, it's not as simple as just strengthen this muscle or this body part, and then it will make you better at running. It's not quite that simple. So the main thing is being selective and very specific with your exercises. So I'll get into in a second, like actual exercises I do that can help. Some are just kind of plays on strength training and others a little bit more running specific. I do want to give full credit that some of this is from Paul Howell. He's the creator of the sling method for runners. He has excellent stuff. I did a podcast with him where he really opened my eyes to a lot of things and really good information. I would really recommend checking him out. I want to give full credit to him for a lot of the exercises I'll show you. But I just want to encourage you to think of being specific and very directed in the type of strength training you do, and not just generally like, well, I'll just strengthen a body part and then that will make me better at running, because that doesn't necessarily happen that way. So let me get into the actual exercises that I would recommend for runners. So I got this from Paul Howell, the sling method. It's a really good way to ingrain this movement pattern. So what I do is I set up a resistance band and kind of stabilize it on something so that it's not going to move around or anything, solid place. And this will kind of mimic the effects of running. So if I'm running, say I have my right foot forward and my left foot back, I take my foot and I internally rotate it just a little bit, so my toes just kind of point straight or like a hair in, and my heel is off the ground, and my torso will be naturally rotated like this if I'm running. So like my right leg will be forward, my left shoulder will be turned a little bit, just like you would run. And I have this resistance band here, and what I'm doing is drilling the movement of running. So then I would push off and rotate forward. So I want to keep my pelvis neutral. So like I'm not turning my pelvis, I'm not, it's actually kind of hard for me to do, but I'm not like turning my pelvis. I keep my pelvis straight, but I'm just rotating my upper body. And my gaze is fixed straight ahead like it would while I was running. My glute of the leg that I'm standing on is just firm and flexed. I'm engaging my core, like a tight core, and then I return back to the starting point. But you see how this kind of mimics running, where forward, I have rotation, and I'm keeping, all the muscles engaged that I normally would. And this helps really ingrain this pattern of movement into like your lifting routine. So then when you go out and run, you're kind of drilling that same movement, and it's the same for like switching sides of like, then if I go to my left hand, then my left foot is forward, my right shoulder would be rotated a little bit, and I'm going to bring my right leg forward, tight glutes, looking ahead, and I have it. And you can hold this for just a second and return, and then another rep, and see how this is just kind of mimicking the movement of running. So this is, and you can progress, through reps or with heavier bands, but really focus on getting really good form with this. And this will start building some strength, but more importantly, it will help ingrain that pattern. So another thing that can be really good, this is where I get into a little bit more of like strength training. So like if you actually want to do things that are similar to strength. So, the problem with squats is like, you're pushing your knees out like this and stretching your inner thigh. Everything else is, is a little bit tighter. So one of the ways we can help eliminate this is by making that we're not pushing our knees out as much while strengthening our knees. So it would be commonly said that like you shouldn't let your knees go past your toes because it puts more force on your knees. However, if you're careful and you don't use a lot of weight and you use good form, putting your knees past your toes in a squat can be really beneficial and actually build up all of the connective tissue in and around your knee, which will make your knee much stronger. So one way to do this is like elevated heel squats. So if you look at, I have 2 weight plates here. I would say that's probably 3 or 4 inches high, and I get my heels on it. So my feet are really exaggerated in the term of like my heels raised up high, my feet are at a pretty good angle, and my feet are close together. And if I squat down, my knees naturally come past my toes, and I can actually get into a very deep squat like this. And when I'm in this position, what I'm doing is I'm strengthening my knees through the absolute full range of motion that they can get. So if I'm always just doing normal squats and coming down to like here, then I'm not really getting that full range of motion benefit. And the most important thing to mobilize and strengthen joints is to be able to strengthen them through a full range of motion, right? So if we're doing squats like this, one, I don't have to drive my knees out. I can just let them be, tracked straight forward. So I'm not tightening or I'm not loosening my inner thighs like I was before. It doesn't have the same effect. And I just use body weight for this. And I go real slow like this. And I just do that for, like maybe 20 reps. Like it's kind of like whatever you can handle. Because it is a little bit hard. You're going to feel a lot of quad burning because this is really just targeting all the muscles in your legs very well. And you can strengthen your knees that way, which I feel like it's never bad to strengthen a body part. But like I said, the goal is just to minimize the trade-off that you're doing. So this eliminates a lot of the things that make running difficult when you squat a lot. So that will help at least in that regard. Another thing you can do, this is kind of a similar method to the knees over toes squat, but I use like a raised platform. This is kind of a good way to work yourself up to that squat if you can. Is you get a raised platform as high as you need to go. You want to get your back foot, pretty far back there. and get yourself positioned. It can be good to do this somewhere close to a wall so you can steady yourself, or something to grab onto so you can steady yourself at first. And all I'm doing is just keeping my hips and body in neutral position and just coming all the way forward. And I actually let my heel come off the ground if I need to get that full range of motion. So I'm bringing my butt as close to my heel and calf as I can, and then reverse out of that. And I just do that, and it's a little bit easier since it's raised up on a platform. And if you use just your body weight and you take this very slowly, very controlled, this will strengthen your knees and just promote general good mobility in your entire lower body region. So, let me think. The only other one that I think could be good, I'll have to turn the camera a little bit so you can see. Let me do this against the wall. Another one that could be good is doing toe raises. So I lean against a wall like this, and I get my feet out a little bit, and all I'm doing is just flexing my toes up like that. And I hold that, and slowly return. Flex up and slowly return. And that can just be a good way to strengthen, because these muscles right here take a fairly good beating from running. So like I said, strength is not a bad thing. It's just trying to be a little bit more specific in how we approach strength training. And there's a lot more exercises that you can do. Maybe I'll get into those at a different point. But that's kind of a good foundation for a few things you can do for strength. And if you really enjoy squatting and stuff, it's not wrong. It's just having some more specific things and some drills to ingrain that form in your head can pay off in the long run. So I hope this helped, made sense. Let me know if there's any questions relating to any of this. And yeah, I'll probably make a video next week about some topic.